Hey everybody, Brian here. You may not know this yet, but I have actually sold my Veloster N to Carvana. I have a video coming on that very soon, so stay tuned for that. But of course, now that means I am looking for my next vehicle. And with the used market and the new market being so out of whack right now, it's hard to find things at the under $30,000 price point with a really good mix of features and powertrain and fuel economy and all that. So that brings us to this all new Chevy Trax for 2024, which has a really nice combination of all of those things. I've been looking for things that are more practical than that Veloster N that I had, so this Trax really makes a lot of sense, and this new one is actually really quite attractive. Compared to the old one, I really didn't like the shape of it. It had more of a tall hatchback look. This is much sleeker, longer, and bigger on the inside, which means it's gonna fit a lot of stuff in there, and I do travel a lot on the road, and I carry things with me, and so that makes this a really good option. But looking at this front end, this is the RS trim. It has a unique look over the active trim, but the rest of the lineup does carry this new, what they call the X theme, where we have this chrome bit that actually juts down on the sides here and enters the headlight module right there. These LED signature DRLs are not standard, but if you do get the other light setups, you do still have some incandescent lighting going on up here. And again, this is a pretty sleek look. You can also get active aero shutters if you want as a standalone option that does throw in an engine block heater. But overall, let me know what you think of the design of the Trax. I really like what they've done here. I really like the size of the Trax because it fits well in city parking spaces and parking lots and things like that. And I am a city dweller, and I think I always will be until the day I die. So this format really works well for me. Things that I'm considering other than the Trax would be the Mazda 3 hatchback or a Toyota Corolla hatchback. I definitely want something more practical than that Veloster N was, but this is the most practical of the three of those. This has 54.1 cubic feet of space on the inside, which is way more than you'll get on either of those models. And check that out back here. Behind the second row, you get just over 25 cubic feet of space, and I can stuff quite a few things back here. There is that fixed cargo shelf thing that we have taken out in order to fit all this back here, but I mean, this is quite a lot of stuff. Under the hood of the Trax, you do have this one engine choice. This is the 1.2 liter turbocharged 3-cylinder engine. This is the base engine you'll find on the Trailblazer. That can also be had with the 1.3. And while I do wish we had the power of the 1.3, the 137 horsepower and 162 pound-feet of torque is actually really usable around town because this is a pretty torquey engine. So fuel economy is also pretty good too, 30 miles per gallon combined, but of course no all-wheel drive. If you need that, that's going to be the Trailblazer, but I much prefer the design and the shape of the Trax. I know most of you probably aren't fans of CVTs, but I don't mind them out on the open highway. I feel like they make the driving experience a little bit smoother. However, if you aren't a fan, the Trax here only comes with a 6-speed automatic. And even though it's not an 8, a 9, or a 10 speed, it actually always knows what gear to be in, and it's not hunting around for all those extra ratios, and it's not as lethargic feeling as a CVT. Now, when it comes to the wheel and tire package, it's a pretty interesting setup. This 2RS trim, these are 245 millimeter wide tires riding on 19-inch wheels. I really like this wheel design. If you go with the active trim, it has a blacked out wheel design with 225 millimeter wide tires. Alex and I both preferred this design, but of course you could probably swap that out if you wanted to. Every trim has 225 millimeter wide tires if you don't go with the 2RS, and that is still wider than most in this segment. The other nice thing is we do have roof rails right here, which can of course add crossbars, and I mountain bike and I ski, so that's gonna be a place that I would put a bike or a ski, and I love that we have the optional sunroof that opens up. There are some competitors out there like the Toyota Prius, which I could also see myself considering, that only has a fixed glass roof. I like that this one opens up. Another surprise for me with the Trax is its interior. Sure, it's got a lot of hard plastics, but what they did with the design of everything is make it look more expensive than it is. Like, for example, we have this interesting pattern with a lot of triangles right here. I do love the red accenting and how it actually continues into the circular air vents. They don't twist or anything, but I mean, that design is really unique in this segment. It looks really cool. Now, on other trims, you could get this accented in bronze, yellow, or even blue. So Chevy gives you a lot of interesting color choices, and I do like that we have faux leather on these upper trims. These are heated seats, not ventilated, but at the price point, that is totally fine with me. A decent-sized glove box, but nothing crazy large. But then when you look over here on the dashboard, this RS steering wheel has a nice flat bottom to it. It feels really good in the hand, and the dashboard itself looks more expensive than it is because we do have that really nice 2-screen setup. I'm a big fan of LCD instrument clusters, and we do have one here on upper trims. It's an 8-inch setup. It's not as snappy or feature-filled as some of the ones on the more expensive Chevy products, but it's really nice to see here in the Trax. The screen size in the center here is 11 inches as well, so that's a big screen for this segment. You can get a smaller 8-inch on the LS trim, but everything else above that has this larger screen. Chevy does give you a physical volume knob for all of you fans of physical knobs. That is still here, which is great. And then we have buttons for the HVAC control. This is a single zone automatic climate control, not a dual, but it is cool to see automatic and heated seats and a heated steering wheel, which I didn't mention already. Wireless phone charger down here is available if you get the sunroof. Those are bundled together for some reason, but it's nice to see that as well. And then just a very basic shifter right here. This is finished in that piano black again, so this is already starting to get scratched up, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but you will get different trim options again if you go with other trim levels. Now the trade-off for going with an RS trim like this is you don't get the optional power seat for the driver. That would actually give you more height adjustment and tilt to the seat bottom itself. So if you find yourself uncomfortable in the seat in this model, you can go for the active trim that will give you that power seat. But you do get the wider tires on the RS, whereas that active trim doesn't. So that is where the trade-off happens. But this seat is still very comfortable. It's not heavily bolstered, but it kept me comfortable when we were driving in the twisties. And for that, I think it's totally fine. I have quite a bit of headroom, even with the optional moonroof. Honestly, I could be a lot taller and still have some room left here. And when you're in the back seat too, it actually still is quite spacious back there. And visibility is nice and open from the front view. This is one spot where you will really shock your friends because this rear seat has so much legroom. They really shaped this to give you both headroom and legroom, but I would say this is the more impressive measure. I mean, look how much space I have left. That's where I was sitting, and the floor itself is not too high off the ground, so I feel comfortable in this particular position. And I have maybe 3 or 4 inches of headroom above my head. It does jut up a little bit right here to give you more space. But overall, it's not a super wide cabin, but it's not a super large vehicle either. Now, right here we've got some cubby space. You can put wherever you want down in there. But USB-C port and USB-A ports right here. These are not standard, but you will find them on the 2RS and the active trim. So clearly, this is not the Veloster N that I just sold to Carvana, but for what it is, this new Trax drives really, really well. It has pretty sharp dynamics, body roll is kept well under control, and even though we have that torsion beam mirror suspension, everything about this feels really sharp compared to anything else really in this segment. And it's also pretty quiet in here. There's active noise cancellation going on, and out on the open highway at 80 miles an hour earlier, it was really quite quiet. You won't be winning drag races in this thing, but for around town driving, the really torquey feel of this engine is usable in just about every scenario you're going to actually be driving this thing in. And out on the highway, if you're trying to accelerate past people, it's not as anemic as you'd expect. But again, if you're trying to do a 0 to 60 run, you will not be beating a lot of cars out there right now. One other thing I really like about this engine is the engine note. Because of the 3-cylinder setup, it has similar harmonics to a 6-cylinder. So this sounds like a bigger engine than it actually is, and you might actually surprise passengers when they get in here. They'll think this is something more like a V6. We won't really know how the brakes do until we do our testing at home on them, but I would say these feel very confidence-inspiring. They're, in typical GM fashion, pretty firm at the top. You do start braking as soon as you tap on them, but they're not so firm that it's difficult to figure out how to modulate them, so I'm, again, pretty impressed with the overall dynamics of the car. If you're wondering about the active safety features like adaptive cruise control and lane departure warning and things like that, the adaptive cruise works just as advertised. The lane keeping assist, however, is more of a reactive system, so it's not going to do any lane tracing like a Toyota product with lane tracing assist or anything like that. So if you're expecting that level of assist, this is not going to be quite there. But again, for the price, it's still nice to have all of those things, but they aren't standard, so keep that in mind. The Trax starts at $21,495, but I'm really considering the 2RS or the active trims. I just like the active trims front end, and I like the sportiness of the wider tires you get here, and I'm honestly struggling a little bit. Do I want the wider tires, or do I just want to go with the active trim, which I think looks better in the front, and just maybe swap out those wheels and tires for the ones you get on this, because you perfectly well could do that if you wanted to. And for the price right here, this is just over $26,000 fully equipped. You could also add that active aero shutter with the engine block heater, which will put it right around 27 or so. But that's a really good price for all the stuff you're getting. The only thing that's kind of sad really is that lack of all-wheel drive. But again, Chevy has an option for you if you really need it in a small package like this, and that's going to be the Trailblazer. But I'm not really considering that car because, again, I don't like the way it looks nearly as much as what you see here. Cars that I'm cross-shopping with the Trax would include the new refreshed Kia Seltos, that all-new Toyota Prius in its base trim levels, as well as the Mazda 3 hatchback with its smaller engine. Those are all very different vehicles in missions, but they are all practical. They have hatchbacks. One of them offers all-wheel drive, that Seltos does, but so does the Mazda 3. However, if I wanted to get a Mazda 3 with all-wheel drive, I'd have to spend over $30,000. With the Seltos, I could get all-wheel drive and just squeak in right under $30,000, but I don't know, I still think this looks a little bit better. The Prius, however, is interesting because obviously that is a hybrid that's going to get nearly double the fuel economy you get in this, and you can get it with all-wheel drive while also staying under $30,000. And not that I really need all-wheel drive, but it's always nice to have it, especially being in Michigan now, where it gives you that extra peace of mind. So I don't know, I think the Prius is also a contender, but it wouldn't have as much content on the inside as this, but it would have more safety features standard. Toyota's safety system is a little bit more robust than what you're getting in here, so that is a consideration because I do have to do long drives from Michigan to North Carolina, and that would be nice to have that peace of mind of the safety features that Toyota gives you. A comparably equipped Prius will actually be 30-ish% more expensive than this. So when it comes down to that kind of comparison, the Prius would honestly be out of the picture. I'd be willing to give up some things for the efficiency that you get out of that car, but let me know what you guys think. What would you pick of those three models? Do you like the Seltos more than this? Do you like that you can get all-wheel drive in it and still stay under $30,000? That is certainly something that I would consider, but I really like the way this drives. The Seltos is not a bad driving car, and neither is the new Prius, but this is really shockingly good, and for the price that I'm trying to stick with, this is really quite excellent. So let me know which one you think is the best, and do you have other options out there that you think I should consider? Let me know in the comment section below.